welcome everybody again to another Fresh Start Alumni webinar. Today we are joined once again by Rozy, back by popular demand, by the way, Rozy. Excited to have you, excited to have everybody with us. I will ask everybody if you could just be cognizant of keeping your Zoom on mute, unless you're asking a question. If you want to ask questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you want to WhatsApp us, private questions, if you want to send in the private chat, you could do so as well. We look forward to having this discussion. So today's alumni webinar, every one of them are important, but I think this one is uniquely important, as Rozy and I were just briefly discussing before we started, how Pesach brings out a lot in all of us, and a lot of different parts show up on Pesach. You know, the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, but within us, we each have those parts that tend to show up and can either allow us to enjoy and lean in and appreciate this time with our family, etc. And sometimes it also brings up a lot of emotion. And hopefully today we'll have a little time where Rozy can give her insight on how we can better manage those stressful moments and hopefully lean into the enjoyable moments. I just want to give a disclosure. Rozy is not in a bathroom, despite what her background looks like. She will share with you she's in a small, beautiful apartment in Eretz Yisrael that clearly hasn't been updated in a few weeks. But that being said, Rozy, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate it, because it looks like the 1950s tiles of an old apartment near Sanhedria in Ramat Eshkol. I have my trauma of right now trying to make Pesach in a kitchen that's not mine. So it's the first time I'm making Pesach in Eretz Yisrael, and I have no idea what I'm doing. It's very, very scary for me. So I am one of you. We are all in this really together. And I've been trying to use a lot of my tools to manage my anxieties and we all get a little OCD about Pesach too. And those of us that don't suffer from the ones that do. And it's a lot of things, Pesach. I'm just gonna show you. It looks like I don't have a self-cleaning oven. So I am panicking about, so I had to buy a little toaster oven. I'm going to make Pesach in a toaster oven. Okay, so now that I have disclosed a lot of my issues, I'm going to share with you a little bit of how I'm managing. And then I would like to do a little exercise that might help us to manage a little better. As it was said in a famous classic book, Pesach is a good time, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It all comes down during Pesach. It is the yontiv where we have the most family togetherness established in a small space, and everything is out of the ordinary, and there are a lot of expectations, more than usual, put on us. And there are a lot of memories. And when I was sharing my kitchen site with my family back in America, and they said, like, what are you going to do for the next 10 days now that you turned over? I said, well, whatever we did before. And he said, yeah, I remember being so hungry all the way up to Pesach, because we lived in a small community where there were no restaurants, and that's it. If you don't eat in your kitchen, you're just eating whatever you can find in the porch or in the garage. So a lot of different things come up for me, and I'm sure for all of you. It is a time of togetherness with a lot of people that we have very conflicting emotional connections with. The people we love, at the same time, it might be the same people that we have been most hurt by. And we want to be able to do it right. And some of us have reached an age of having our children, even maybe grandchildren, and we want to do it right for them, but the memories keep popping in. And when the memories and the images pop in, emotions also get triggered, and it's sort of difficult really to be able to make good decisions sometimes when the emotions are charged up. We had talked about that in our previous webinar, that to previous alumni webinar, that when our emotions are charged up, our ability to think and problem solve effectively diminishes extremely. And this is something you probably were told during your Fresh Start retreat. And that is really why we need to connect to a lot of tools. We need to connect to our skills that we gain, and we need to be able to distance ourselves a little bit from being swallowed up by the emotions and distance ourselves from the emotions a little bit. One of the things that I try to do when I'm extremely charged from maybe, let's say, Pesach, I try to watch from a distance what's going on. Like, put a bit of a distance. Have you, I don't know if anybody has tried to pretend like they are a security camera in a room, like just observing what's going on instead of being in it. Try to see yourself in the movie, the back of yourself, because instead of looking into the movie through your own eyes. I don't know if, does it make sense to anybody? Like, give me a sign what I'm trying to say. I try to look at it as if I'm filming the experience. And that way the emotions are a little bit more distant and more removed, yet we can really stay in it to the level that we can solve problems, we can observe, and we can see what's going on.
So Rozy, how
Yes.
the word I've heard used is like the observing state, to observe. How would
Yes.
somebody take themselves from being in the movie, as you said, to when the emotions are so strong? Are there steps to help
Yes,
become the observer?
there are several things we can do. First of all, it is very important, if you want to change the state of your emotions, you have to change, you have to move. You actually have, or move out of the room, or move into, like, if you're sitting, stand up. If you're standing, sit down. Just don't, being standstill is going to keep you in that state. So if you want to change state, you have to move. And then we had talked about things that work for me that I would like to share is going and washing my face with cold water, like taking a little restroom break and washing my face. And washing your face actually has double benefit, because this activity, what we call havening, skin to skin touch, is very soothing. Okay? Try it a little bit. We call it a havening exercise. There are other ways of havening too. other skin-to-skin contact. But if you are feeling charged, you really need to be able to do few things that will be helpful to you. Another thing that I really try to do, and this is also important for people who are going to be going to somebody else's house for Pesach, maybe going back to parents' home, or people are coming to your home and it is going to once again, going to be in contact with people that have been triggering for you before, and you know what's coming, because nothing is new to us. Generally, our triggers are known to us. We know how it's going to come. And in the exercise that we are going to talk about a little later, we are going to see how we can manage that. But most of the things that happen that come and trigger us are not new things. They are old things. And they are the kinds of things that we say, I can't believe I'm here again. You know, that is the way we react generally. It's like, I told myself I would never put myself in this situation, hence here we are. And I would never react like this, hence here we are. But so since we know what is likely to happen, we can really plan to how to handle it before we are in the situation. First of all, I am a big believer on olfactory smell tools. Each one of us have some kind of smell that is soothing, comforting for us. For some of us, it might be the perfume we use or the shampoo or the cream we use. Some people use some spices that they like. A lot of people use essential oils, okay? So I would like most of you to really try to experiment and see which smell, go around, try the smells that you like, which smell is comforting for you, because our olfactory bulb is right next to our amygdala, which is our fear reaction, emotional center of our brain. And when we can utilize our olfactory bulb to downregulate our amygdala, that is, because it is also strategically placed, it's the fastest action is the smell. So take your time and try different smells, because different smells affect different people differently, and try different smells. And once you have found the smell that is down-regulating for you, you can prepare a little toolbox for yourself. I use sometimes those essential oil dispensers, the roll-ons that probably you used when you were in Fresh Start. And a lot of men would not necessarily want to be seen with one of those. But what I recommend that they can put the smell that is comforting for them into a Mentos container with a cotton ball, so we can always have access to that. I sometimes also put it at the end of my tichel, and then I can easily feel it, that you can go incognito. That is really one of the most fastest reacting tools, the smell.
So two questions, Rozy. First of all, a question that was just asked in the chat. When you remove yourself from a situation, how do you know if it's disassociating or regulating yourself? What are the tips and tools to know the difference?
Okay.
And then the next question I would have asked is, can you just explain a little bit more of the science of how, when we smell something or take an action like that, that it resets or reduces the intensity of the feeling?
If it is a down-regulating smell, unfortunately.
Right, if it's a down-regulating, yes.
Unfortunately, some smells are triggering smells. Like there are a lot of people that have very disturbing memories of people drinking a lot at the Seder and really creating undesirable scenes, and the smell of the yayin can trigger some people. So knowing what is triggering and being able to be prepared with a counter smell that is down-regulating instead of triggering would also be helpful. I mean, that's just one example. There are so many examples. Certain people's homes smell a specific way, and that could be triggering. And certain people themselves smell a specific way, that could be triggering. So smell is a very, very powerful trigger, and it also is a very, very powerful counter trigger.
I will point out, I'm going to send out an email after this call, but a organization in Eretz Yisrael called Kol Neshamot did an amazing webinar a few days ago with a very prominent Rav in Givat Zev, and he addresses a lot of, from a halachic perspective, how to down-regulate appropriately, and covering a lot of the important halachic things, both relating to ourselves as well as relating to children struggling. So I will send that out. There was a fantastic webinar and an important one. But I guess going back to the question then,
I would appreciate if you send it to me too, Mr. Poulter.
I will send it to you as well, Rosie. But going back to the disassociating question.
Okay. Disassociation is a spectrum. Okay, it's not either you're disassociating or you're not disassociating. It is really a spectrum. Sometimes distancing yourself is mild dissociation from being in the thick of the situation. When the situation is very dysregulating, keeping a little distance is really guided disassociation. It's like not splitting, but putting a little distance. So if we look at dissociation as a spectrum, I think that might be able to help us. So this is the beauty of it. The reason we dissociate is because the body is trying to protect us from being in an overwhelming situation that we are not capable of managing. Now, when we actually put a distance in a purposeful, thoughtful, planned way, this might really prevent us to go to all the way on the other side of the spectrum, because we are managing how much we are allowing that emotion to take over us. We are not blending with the emotion of the moment. We are sort of watching the emotion of the moment. Does that help? I don't know who asked the question, but does that help a little bit? Please feel free to put your hand up, and maybe I can explain a little better. But I personally, when I am doing, I sometimes say, just imagine that you're watching the situation in a screen, in a movie screen or in a TV screen. There is like a frame around what's going on. Create a frame. And if it is still too intense, you can make it black and white and watch it like that. And sometimes, instead of watching it through your own eyes, be the security camera and watch it. Try to see yourself in the movie, like the back of your head, you're watching from the top, okay? This whole situation. And that will give you a little bit of an emotional distance on how you're going to handle that situation.
So you're saying there is such a thing, what we might call healthy disassociation?
Actually, all of them are healthy to a certain degree, because the body knows what it can handle and what it has to get away with. But unfortunately, sometimes when the body figures out a way to handle something, the brain likes precedence. Even the slightest trigger can take us out. That is the unhealthy part, that it becomes a habit. With the trigger, we just check out immediately. So, because once the brain discovers a tool that helps us avoid the intense pain that we might be in, the brain will keep going to that tool all the time. And so if the dissociation was helpful before, it will be the go-to tool all the time. That's why, like, when we are angry, when we scream or when we yell at somebody, if they stop being abusive to us, we will keep screaming and yelling at that person all the time because we have discovered how to stop this person. And like some people say, I promised myself I would not yell again, but once it becomes automatic pilot because it worked before. So the way to change the automatic pilot is really to plan a rescripting, to try a rescripting scenario for the future template. Was that helpful in explaining?
I think so. I guess I would add, I mean, I know this is an obvious, but let's just make it clear. This is all assuming that the trigger is just that, a trigger, meaning you're currently in a safe situation. It's just bringing
Correct.
back
Correct.
memories from the past. This isn't going to help if you're actually being abused or neglected or etc. right here, right now. That's a different response.
Right.
One that, okay.
That brings me into another issue. We really need to evaluate if what we are planning is going to be a safe place for us. I mean, that's a very important pre-Pesach preparation. To discuss that if you have a therapist with your therapist, to process it objectively with somebody, to see if we will have a voice in the place that we are going to be, to see that, to assess if we are going to be safe, if other people in our lives that we are responsible for their safety, if we can keep them safe. And of course, you know, there might be some shilas that might need to be asked for decisions that might need to be made. Or there might be just plain discussing it with our therapist or with our spouse, or just trusting our gut feeling that I am not able to manage this. Okay, so that assessment is very, very important.
Okay. Are there any questions before we move into this next phase where Rosie will go through an exercise or two and help us? If anybody has any questions on what was discussed so far?
I just wanted to say that what you just said was very helpful about disassociating from overwhelming situations. So thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome, Spia. We are having more people coming in, I think. Okay, so there is also, if I actually use one smell, one oil essence that actually can take you out of a intense dissociation. It's not a good, like, pleasant smell, but it's called vetiver. I don't know if I had mentioned that in my previous one. I use that with my clients if they are really intensely dissociating. It smells like earth. Vetiver.
How do you spell it? How do you spell it?
V as in Victor, E as in Edward, T-I-V-E-R.
Okay.
Vetiver oil. And it smells like when you pull something from the roots, from the earth, it smells like roots, earth. It's not a pleasant smell, but it grounds you. It literally smells like earth and grounding. And it grounds you into the present, and it really can bring, I have used it very successfully with several clients who were dissociating in the session, and they had given me permission to use that if they did dissociate.
So there's something literally clinical, if you will, about that particular smell.
It seems to be working better than some other smells. It's not a pleasant smell, but it's not toxic or very burning kind of smell either. It just smells like earth. It just smells like roots. Okay, so I find it to be very helpful. We also, it's not all or nothing thing either. We also might really want to modify how we are going to be with the people that we are fearful of triggering. Like, are we going to stay in the place, like sleep in the place that was very difficult for us? Can we stay in a nearby hotel, or can we stay with a neighbor? These are all ways that we can distance ourselves from the intensity of the experience and modify the difficulty of the experience that we're going to be with. And I would also recommend, if we are going back to family of origin, as much as it is possible, to have an honest discussion with possibly with our spouse, how it was for us, maybe make a plan. If we have a supportive spouse, make a plan how to give a sign or to say a word, or when we need help and how they might be able to help us. Because in the heat of the moment, it is very difficult for us to make a productive decision because we are very emotional and the prefrontal cortex is shut down. That's our problem-solving department. And that's why, since we know mostly what kind of things are difficult for us in this situation, we have experienced it many times and it is likely not changed, we can sit down and have a kind of buddy, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a sibling, whether it's somebody that in that place that we trust. If we can share with them, I'm having a difficult time. I think I will have a difficult time. And can we plan, if I do have a difficult time, how you can help me, how I can ask for help, and to have some kind of a game plan in the situation. Like preparing is the most effective way of doing it. And the exercise that I wanted to do is, we call it re-scripting our future planning. Okay. As I said before, we really more or less know what kind of situations are difficult for us, and we more or less know that whether those situations are likely to come up or not. So instead of saying, when this happens, I will not do this, or when this happens, I will do this, we really can prepare the visualization of that situation in a way we can imagine. This is guided imagery exercise. We can imagine ourselves handling it in the best way we wish we could, and actually running that like a movie in the eye of our mind. Because I've said this in previous webinars, this is the tool that I use the most. I said it in previous webinars that I have presented and conferences I have presented. When we raise our hand, there are different parts of the brain that lights up, is activated, the motor cortex, that all the different parts that give the command and receive the nerve information that the hand was raised. There are particular things that happen. And when we actually visualize ourselves raising our hand, and not raise our hand, just visualize ourselves raising our hand, we see from functional MRIs that the brain reacts exactly the same way as if we did raise our hand. So we can actually prepare ourselves for an experience and start up the how shall I put it? To start up the new neural pathways to go ahead and achieve the kind of reaction we would like to do before the heat of the moment comes up. So I would like possibly somebody who might have a certain experience that they would like to react differently than they usually do, but they have not been successful. And I would like if that person can share a little bit of what that scene would be like, and we can do the exercise together for other people to see the model. Would there be a volunteer for us? Just, it doesn't have to be an extreme situation. It can be like not popping in not having an eating reaction, not having a screaming reaction, not something like that, that we would like to practice with me.
Is anybody
Is that
open
Haya,
to?
you turned your camera because of that? Okay.
Haya, you're on mute.
Why not? Give it a shot.
Okay. Thank you very much, Haya. I did attend a whole week of Fresh Start, which was a very wonderful experience for me. And I really felt very connected with the whole group of women who were there. But I don't think that you were one of them, Haya. So Haya, if you would like to share a little bit of what you would like to be able to handle differently than how you handle.
Okay, so for me, what's coming up right now is going to food, to sugar, particularly, when I'm tired. So that's, instead of having the self-care of having a good night's sleep during the day, and I really either could use a nap or I have too much to do. There isn't even like the pause. So I would like to have some kind of way to have a pause before I just like open the cabinet, grab something.
How do you make it a little bit not as easy for you to have access to that, Haya?
So I tried that, putting the basket of stuff on the top shelf, but I'm tall and I have a step stool.
Okay.
So that trick didn't really work.
Okay.
Also, not buying the things when I go to the store. It's a real inner fight. Don't buy the chocolate. Don't buy the whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the past 2 days, I wasn't successful.
Yeah.
That's why it's coming up loud for me.
Okay. Because chocolate and sugar has that immediate soothing effect for some of us, and the problem is it sort of cycles you into more and more and more of it. It's like once you take a little bit of it, okay, I blew it already. It's like
One
the
piece is not
whole
enough.
bar. Yeah.
Eat the whole bar and maybe
Yes.
another bar.
That's right, if it is available. So tell me what you would like to see yourself do instead. Just take your time.
So just noticing that that's my default setting and forgiving myself for having that. That would be step number one. And also honoring my wish for having healthier choices and to be aware of what my actual needs are underneath that. So whether it is a tiredness, whether it is an interaction with my spouse or my mother that triggered me, and I'm like, I don't even matter. So just like eat whatever. To sit with that and really give myself the love and whatever it is that I need in that moment, rather than, oh, I was just hurt, let me continue hurting myself.
How would you like to give yourself that love? What kind of would you like to see yourself take a nap? Would you like to see yourself take a shower? Would you take bubble bath? Would you like to see yourself calling a friend? Would you like to see yourself prepare a salad for yourself ahead of time that's easily accessible? A salad that you would like with some sweet stuff in it. It's like some food that you would really still enjoy be available. How would you like to see yourself handling just a specific situation? Pick up a specific situation that is likely to come up tomorrow. Okay. And see, instead of just going to the cabinet and then berating yourself, what would you like to be able to do in that
To
situation?
speak to someone about it, to share my feelings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a list of people that you could call, that you have a list right on your refrigerator with their telephone numbers, because it's not going to happen otherwise?
Right. So I'm very fortunate. I have a very long list, but I didn't
Good.
recently spell it out for myself. Even 5 people just to have. And I have, now that you're saying it, my friend's son just got married, and I kind of feel like I've lost a friend for a little bit. I know it's temporary, and I'm wondering if that has to do with it, because I would call her first. So that is definitely something that is practical that I can do.
Okay. And call her. If you don't think you can call her, even text her, whatever way you can connect to her. Okay. So you have a list of people you would rather call somebody instead of just, okay. And you have a list of people organized in priority wise, who would, if that's not available, I can call this, that, not available. Okay. So you have the list, and the list is handy, right? Next of the Nosh cabinet, right?
Yeah. I actually bought for myself, after a previous Zoom call that we had, little sticky, like a clear sticky file thing that I could put onto my cabinets that says either pause or something. I didn't do it yet, but I have those things, so I can add that.
Okay, great. So I would like you to imagine whatever is likely to possibly happening to you tomorrow that would trigger you. Okay. Now, when you're imagining it, you automatically feel the sensation of the trigger. Are you experiencing it?
Yeah, I feel hungry.
Okay. Immediately. Okay. So the SUDs, like the subjective units of this, of like 0 to 10, where are you at as you're imagining that difficulty?
An 8.
Okay, that's very high. That's very high. I also would like you to have available water bottles. Good for you. You know your stuff. Okay. So I would also keep them handy because for hunger, drink, a lot of people misinterpret thirst for hunger too. Okay.
Yeah.
So just what we are going to do, as you feel the trigger coming, we are going to actually tap on your knees like this.
Okay.
Like 1 per second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like an EMDR type of thing.
Yeah, but not fast. Just
Right.
1 per second. That's not reprocessing, that installation. Okay. Because when you do fast, the fast one, then you're going to get from one trigger to the other. So do slow tapping. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the scene where you imagine the trigger occurring. Notice where you're feeling it, how intensely you're feeling it. And then run the movie of you handling it as just like you would like to handle it. Okay? What you're going to do as you're tapping, run the movie. When the suds go very high, stay in that spot until it goes down. Stand still, continue tapping. And then notice what you're saying to yourself. What would you like to be able to say to yourself?
I can do this.
I can do this. Okay. Say that to yourself out loud or quietly. Your brain should hear it. Because in certain situations, you might not be able to say it out loud. And go to the next scene as how you would like to handle it as you're tapping. If you get stuck, just wait for the suds to go down. Pause the movie until the suds go down. Run the whole movie, take your time, and when you're done, you'll let us know.
Wow.
How was
Um,
that?
I feel completely embodied, calm, and not activated.
Okay. Haya, what I'm going to recommend to you is that this was only one-time use. You laid a little mild neural pathway. The more you do this exercise, the stronger this pathway is going to become, and the more likely you will choose this pathway. Okay? Let's keep practicing it. Okay? And you can do this with, and when I have to go to court to testify, that is very scary for me, because a lot of times the other side's attorney's job is to tear me to pieces in court. So I just do this all the time. Prepare myself for court. When I'm asked questions that is really attacking me, how am I going to handle? I'm going to hold myself high. How am I going to answer in a calm, commanding voice? You know, and I just see myself. Okay, I get into it so much that one time one of my interns was watching me in court. She said, "Why do you speak with a British accent when you're in court?" I didn't even know. You see, you get, so it really prepares us to be able to do it. Keep practicing. When you know you're likely to have a situation come up and be difficult for you, keep practice like living it before visual guided imagery. Guided imagery, it lays the pathways for a new path than the one you have had before. And you're more likely to take that new path in the heat of the moment, because doing it for the first time, setting up a new connection for the first time in the heat of the moment is practically impossible. That's what we say to ourselves. When that happens, I'm not going to do that again. But in the heat of the moment, if we have not prepared ourselves, we are going to do it again, because we don't know what else to do.
Right.
We have not prepared ourselves for anything else. Okay. Do we have any questions as to, did anybody else do it? By the way, you did a beautiful job. Thank you for sharing. And I know that being the
Thank you.
person that volunteers is not, it requires courage. And I appreciate that you
Thanks
were
much.
to be helpful to everybody, including me. Thanks.
So Rosie, again, I think this goes back to what you said before about planning. So there's both planning to make sure that your environment is safe, et cetera. And then within reason, as much as you can, think
Correct.
about a few different scenarios and how you might react differently to them. And here you're not focusing on the trauma part of the scenario. You're focusing on the, if I could, this is how I would handle it. And as you're doing that, you're doing this gentle tapping. Is that
Correct. Correct.
okay?
The issue is a lot of times we are more disappointed with ourselves than with anybody else. You know, that is really the challenge for us, because we know that we are not in control of other people. We've known that for a long time. We might have tried to control other people. That's never successful, but we are mostly disappointed in ourselves, in how we respond, how we react, how we submit, or how we rage. We are the biggest disappointment to ourselves sometimes. When we are able to respond in the way we wish we could, we have conquered really a lot.
Okay, and just to recap, some of the other quick tips you mentioned were, one, washing the face. You talked about physical skin to skin touch, even if it's just your hands on your face.
Yes,
Taking a breather, not disassociating, but getting up physically and walking around
yes.
is an important
Changing
part.
position, body position. Sitting, if you're sitting, stand up. If you're standing, sit down. Just move from one chair to the other, go to the other room, pretend you're getting something from the kitchen, or pretend you're going to the restroom, whatever it is, change positions.
Okay, and for all the men that it might be on this call and that are listening to it, this does not only apply to the woman. If there's things in shul or et cetera, or situations at the Seder, it's the same strategies. you don't have to, this doesn't have to only do with the women and the stress of cleaning and cooking and all that for Pesach.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when one of my sons got married and he said, I don't understand. My mother-in-law's favorite yontif is Pesach. She's just so overjoyed with Pesach, and I'm going, it's like, why can't I be like that? It's just, I can't be like that. But just sitting at that Seder sometimes makes it up for me. But for some people, it's the Seder that's the horrifying part. So it's like we all have our moments, and we know what our moments are. That is our strength, because we know what's coming up for us. It's not new. We are actually going to the past instead of going into the future. We know what our triggers are. These are very, very important. And please, one of the things that is really, really makes Pesach very difficult for a lot of us is sleep deprivation. Now, sleep deprivation, when we do an intake for a new client, one of the most important questions we will ask is, how is your sleep? Because if sleep is not regulated, nothing else is going to work. Nothing else is going to work. And the first thing we have to do, because there are only 3 diagnoses in hundreds of diagnostic criteria in the psychological disorders criteria that come without sleep disorder comorbidity. That means that all psychological diagnoses are also present with sleep disorders. And if we do not take care of the sleep, we are not going to be able to improve anything else either. So if you are, and I can send this to you, Mr. Poulter, maybe you can share it with everybody. I can give you a sleep hygiene sheet that that I use guided from a book. And if we can, please, because we're cleaning, we are preparing, you're not going to be effective. Your work is going to be half, much slower and much less perfect, as well as your tolerance level is going to be lower to any difficulty that you're experiencing. Sleep is very, very important. So I would recommend that everybody really get their sleep in order as much as possible, because you're not going to be able to cope with whatever is coming if your sleep is not regulated. And I will send Mr. Poulter sleep hygiene, like how you can prepare your room, how you can avoid certain foods, certain times of the day you should not exercise that would affect when is a good time to walk, what kind, so that you can adjust your melatonin levels. These are very important things, like to help get our sleep regulated.
Okay, well, we'll certainly send that out. I want to take this opportunity, Rozy, to thank you for making time on Erev Pesach all the way from Eretz Yisrael in a new kitchen. So at least we know your heart is with us, and we appreciate that.
Yes,
and
yes.
a wonderful, relaxing, and calming Pesach to all of our alumni and everybody watching this. And until the next time, take care, and thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.